What's going on, everybody? It's your boy GemMint, and unfortunately I didn't have a Daredevil shirt, so this Deadpool shirt's gonna have to do. But I figured with Daredevil Born Again dropping on Disney Plus next week and the Daredevil by Nocenti Omnibus coming out the following week, this would be a perfect time to do an updated every Daredevil Omnibus release so far. But in honor of this special occasion, I figured, you know what, let's up the ante and do a giveaway for the Daredevil by Bendis Omnibus Volume 2 Still Sealed. So what I'm going to do is put this up for giveaway over on my Encore page. Encore is an online selling platform similar to eBay, but the twist is instead of uploading pictures, you upload videos. Encore has already made a name for themselves in the Funko Pop space and in retro video games, and they just recently opened their comic books category. Sellers can list items for 7-day auctions, or they can do buy it nows with best offers enabled, and with videos instead of pictures, it allows them to give you more history on the item that they're selling, maybe where they found it, point out any potential defects on it, and just add a more personal selling experience. All the sellers that are selling on Encore have been vetted and have uploaded photo ID, myself included, and Encore has buyer protection just in case you order something that doesn't come as described. Encore's got your back. I've got the link in the description and in the pinned comment. I'm going to put this up for giveaway for 7 days, so this way you don't have to actually be there when the giveaway is being drawn, but make sure you enter the giveaway, follow me on Encore, and let's jump into every Daredevil Omnibus release so far, and let's start at the beginning with Daredevil volumes 1 through 3 from the original series. All right, so for the first 3 volumes, we get the cover for issue 1, issue 53, and issue 100, starting with Stan Lee, ending with Jerry Conway. This has the old school style spines here where there's not much going on, but you can see how they stack up. This being the first printing when they had the bigger text on the side, and then they started going with the smaller ones, similar to their Epic collections where it has like a little image on the bottom. But let's take a look at the back and see what do we get with these first 3 volumes. So as you can see, we get issues 1 through 119, which means we probably need just one more volume to catch up to the Frank Miller Omnibus. In addition to those issues, we get Annual 1 with Fantastic Four 73, Invincible Iron Man 35 and 36. Then we get Avengers 111, Marvel 2 and 1-3, and Amazing Adventures 1 through 8. On the inside of the dust jackets, they're all similar. It just lets you know where we're at with the story, a biography on all the different creators. Here's a quick look at what the books look like under the dust jacket, so similar on volume 1 and 2, and then you have the updated logo on volume 3. The spines for all 3 are the same as what the dust jackets have, and then on the back, nothing on volume 1, but volumes 2 and 3 have the DD. So volume 1 gives us the origin story of Matt Murdock, our man without fear. It establishes him as the son of battling Jack Murdock, who's a past his prime boxer. We learn his fate. Tragically, he dies after not throwing a fight for the mob in the ring. So he's got a lot of pride. He doesn't want to let his son down, and we get the death of Matt Murdock's father. Here goes issue 1, the origin of Daredevil, highly inspired by Spider-Man and considered to be part of the initial Marvel Comics run with Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and the X-Men. Here you have Jack trying to teach his son how to do right, and we learn that a young Matt Murdock, he blinds himself trying to save a careless pedestrian on the streets of New York City in Hell's Kitchen. He swerves away from a truck, the truck crashes, it's hauling radioactive waste, and then Matt Murdock becomes a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. No, I'm just kidding, but the Turtle's origin did borrow heavily from the Daredevil story. But Matt Murdock loses his sight and gains heightened abilities with his hearing, his smelling, even his agility, becoming the man without fear. He traverses over the city tops using his billy clubs. As you can see, he starts off with the yellow costume and then goes to what we know now, the traditional red Daredevil outfit. Even though he can't see and he's technically blind, he does have a kind of radar sense, which allows him to see where everything is. And we get the exploits of Matt Murdock as Daredevil, and we start to get introduced into his rogues gallery. You've got the Stilt Man, you've got the Purple Man, the Owl, Mr. Fear, and the Gladiator. So that's what's established through these first issues. Matt Murdock grows up and becomes an attorney at law, so he is the blind lawyer who is a vigilante by night. By the time we get to issues 42 through 74, we're in the 70s, and Daredevil has kind of more of a social relevance than the other books out at the time. This volume will end Stan Lee's tenure on the character, and then we start to get more writers like Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway, Gene Colan. This volume contains the final Stan Lee stories on the character, including the first appearance of the Jester, adding to the Rogues Gallery. Matt Murdock will fall into a relationship with Karen Page here. We have more of the supporting cast with his partner at law, Foggy Nelson. We have Daredevil goes to battle with Captain America in an epic issue. I always love this kind of photorealistic cover with Daredevil and the Jester in front of the Statue of Liberty. Then with issue 51, Roy Thomas comes on as the writer with Barry Windsor Smith on the art. You have Black Panther making an appearance here. Issue 53, the cover of the Dust Jacket. And by the time we get to the end of the omnibus, Gene Colan will be relieved by Jerry Conway, who will tackle the character next. But great artwork and big panels in these pages from the 70s. All right, the big takeaway from Volume 3 is the introduction of the Black Widow into the Daredevil lore. And not only does she join in the issues, but she's on the title of the trade dress on these covers as well. Here we have more of the table of contents. Great info in these older Omnis. Love to see Daredevil go up against Spidey villains. Here's the Scorpion. Famously, issue 2 of Daredevil is the second appearance of Electro as well. So there's a lot of crossover between Daredevil and Spider-Man. Here we have Amazing Adventures 1, which kind of begins the Black Widow and Daredevil partnership / romance. So we're going to get 8 issues of that before we go back into the main title, which will pick back up with issue 75 versus El Condor. So no Black Widow yet, but eventually she'll join in, and like I said, join in on the actual cover as well, with kind of a relationship that would last until this day. Black Widow and Daredevil, 2 peas in a pod. Steve Gerber is going to end up taking over on the writing duties as we approach the milestone issue 100 of Daredevil. Here we have issue 100, and then they'll eventually lead into team-ups with the X-Men, with the Avengers, Spider-Man once again, as they go up against Kraven the Hunter. After that initial run, Daredevil would really find its stride with a new up-and-coming creator, Frank Miller. He starts off penning Daredevil, but ends up becoming one of the greatest artists of that generation. Let's take a look at the Daredevil by Frank Miller Omnibus and its companion. Whereas the original Daredevil run falls into a lot of those 60s and 70s comic book tropes, this is where it gets real. Daredevil by Frank Miller, we have the original, and then we have the companion. So this is where we get the grittiness. You have Kingpin, you have Elektra, as you can see here, Bullseye. Incredible issues here by a character-defining writer with Frank Miller. So here's the spines here. These are both the old school first editions, and it collects issues 158 through 161, skips 162, 163 through 191, with What If 28. Now the companion collects Spectacular Spider-Man 27 and 28, Daredevil 219, 226 through 233, and then the Daredevil Man Without Fear 5-issue miniseries, and the Daredevil Love and War graphic novel. Now the reason some issues are omitted is because this is really a creator-themed omnibus, so Frank Miller didn't write or draw either of those issues. Under the Dust Jacket, very similar old school Marvel Omnis with the black kind of faux leather, the silver foil with similar spines. If you guys know me, you'll know that my Frank Miller Daredevil Omnibus is the most damaged omnibus in my entire collection. It's also one of the first ones and one of the first omnibus I read from front to back. Frank Miller was known for taking existing characters and really redefining them, like with Batman and The Dark Knight Returns. We get something similar here with Daredevil. So here's the first issue, 158. So here we have more Black Widow as we established through those first volumes. She becomes a mainstay till this day. Here's a look at Daredevil using his kind of radar vision. So here we have some Elektra Nachios action. Always loved how Frank Miller depicted her with her fight scenes, always with the stabbing through the chest, and then you can see the side poking out of their back. Then we get the longtime rivalry, the Kingpin here, who although looks fat and overweight, Frank Miller establishes that he is actually a force to be reckoned with, as you can see him training. And then we really get an amazing lifelong feud between two popular comic book characters, Daredevil and the Kingpin. So dark, gritty, it really adds that touch of realism that Daredevil was missing from those original volumes. I mean, sure, he's experienced loss before, but look, he was in love with Elektra. She dies at the hands of Bullseye. And then who do we have show up? Another mainstay in the Daredevil universe, the Punisher. Kingpin, the Punisher, Elektra, Bullseye. This is what makes this run so spectacular. The cast of characters, the action, the storytelling, even though Stiltman is brought back. So Frank Miller takes a little bit of a break from the character, and then he comes back to create probably the most known Daredevil storyline with Born Again, the same title that the upcoming show is going to be named. Deals with strong issues like drug use. Karen Page actually outs Daredevil in exchange for some drugs. So those type of hard-hitting, grounded stories. Then you have Bill Sienkiewicz doing amazing artwork here with Frank Miller penning the stories. Here's issue 227, which is the front of the dust jacket here. Marvel loves to depict Daredevil as always kind of beat down. You always see him kind of at his lowest, with his secret identity exposed, the Kingpin not letting up whatsoever. Here's issue 230, starting the Born Again storyline. Again, establishing that Kingpin looks like he's a big fat slob, but really is a formidable foe. Then you got the stuff with the former soldier Nuke, another character that we end up seeing a lot more of as Daredevil continues. Yeah, but here we have the Frank Miller, Bill Sienkiewicz stuff, who also, as an honorable mention, helped with the Elektra stuff, and there's an omnibus for that as well that's long out of print. That whole omnibus kind of looks like this, with this painted style, very abstract. Kingpin with this huge head but small face. The companion is kind of an essential book, considering it has the Born Again storyline, and then everybody remembers the Frank Miller, John Romita Jr. 5-issue series. Very dramatic, showing the death of his father once again, kind of a retelling of the origin here. The great boxer who refused to throw the fight. A rare one where you actually really should get the companion. Next up, we're going to take an early look at the Daredevil by Ann Nocenti Omnibus, which directly follows that iconic Frank Miller run. This one's scheduled to come out on March 12th, and if you're looking for any good places to order new Omnibus, you got to check out our sponsor, Organic Price Books. You can do pre-orders there, you can shop for in-stock items. All titles are heavily discounted with great packaging and fast shipping. Plus, you can save an additional $2 by using code GemMint at checkout. And if you're overseas, if you're within the EU, I don't know why you haven't checked out Comics Bugle yet. They're also heavily discounted. You can save $5 off of your first order there by using code GemMint at checkout. It's free shipping, no taxes or import fees if you're within the EU. Not only do they have great packaging, but they have packaging made from recyclable materials. So if you're in the EU, check out comicsbugle.com, and we're going to check out an early look at Daredevil by Ann Nocenti. All right, so here we are, Daredevil by Ann Nocenti and John Romita Jr. We have the Daredevil logo on the spine. This is volume 1, which picks up directly from where that companion omnibus left off. If you remember, that ended at 233. This one is collecting 234 through 266, plus you get Punisher 10. Here's the covers on the back here, some iconic stuff. An awesome wraparound cover here with Daredevil kicking the Punisher in the stomach. So before Ann Nocenti jumps on, we actually get some stuff from Steve Ditko, which was pretty awesome. You have this madcap little storyline, and it feels very 60s, even though this is much more of a modern story. The kind of way that it's written and even drawn feels like Steve Ditko, old school Spider-Man. But eventually Ann Nocenti would jump in with big shoes to fill. I mean, you're following Frank Miller, and she does an amazing job of telling this grounded Daredevil story. At this point in time, Matt Murdock is no longer a lawyer. He's just working at a diner. Here we have a little cameo from Ulysses Claw. He's dating Karen Page, but Karen Page is having a hard time dealing with the news footage that she's seeing of Daredevil beating these villains down with his bare hands. She starts to feel scared from him, and she feels like he's becoming this monster. So you have this divide between Matt and Karen. Now, if you thought Kingpin was a brutal enemy, this is where we get introduced to another crazy character, pun intended, with Typhoid Mary. She is literally insane. I know her from Spider-Man lore, but you can see here she's giving Daredevil a run for his money. So you have a new addition to the Rogues Gallery. We get a great Wolverine and Sabretooth cameo here. Sabretooth living in the sewers, killing humans, Daredevil trying to find him. You got this guy Bullet that can create weapons out of his bare hands. Kind of feels like the character Random from mutant lore. And of course, the team up with the Punisher, like I mentioned in issue 10. The next omnibus in the timeline is the Joe Quesada Marvel Knights run. This is volume 2 of Daredevil, which features Kevin Smith, Joe Quesada, David Mack, and of course, Marvel Knights co-creator Jimmy Palmiotti. Let's take a look at it. The first volume of Daredevil would go up to 380 issues until we would get a volume 2. And now we're in the Marvel Knights era. This cover's got Daredevil and Spidey on it. And this one's called The Marvel Knights by Joe Quesada. But really, this is the beginning of volume 2, which would lead into the Brian Michael Bendis run. So it collects issues 0 through 15, plus the 1/2 issue. It also has the Daredevil Father 6-issue miniseries, Marvel Authentics Daredevil 1, and some material from the Marvel Knights Double Shot issue number 1. Joe Quesada is well known for his double-page spreads, so of course we get a beautiful wraparound cover on the hardcover itself. The Marvel Knights imprint was created to bring back characters that haven't really been in the spotlight. So you had Black Panther, you had Daredevil, and it was a way to take this character and kind of redefine him again. Kevin Smith with the Guardian Devil storyline was actually also reprinted as a large Treasury edition, or is it a Gallery edition, which was a great story here with modern artwork by Joe Quesada. We would eventually get to some David Mack artwork. This includes the first appearance of the character Echo, who we just saw have her own television show. And we're in the late 90s here, 1998. Eventually getting to the Father storyline, which is the first time Joe Quesada would write and draw his own comic book. So a great relaunch for the character. A different imprint, which was kind of more grounded and gritty. Kind of think like Marvel Max line, but this was even before that. Great artwork, and this is probably where you would start reading the Daredevil stuff. It's much more accessible than trying to go through Silver Age and Bronze Age. So ending the 90s, leading into the 2000s. Directly following that run, we have Daredevil by Brian Michael Bendis, keeping the art stylings of David Mack, but also introducing Alex Maleev. A fan favorite run, Daredevil by Bendis. As you can see, the gritty type of covers on the dust jacket, more of a modernized look on the side here on the spine, volumes 1 and 2, and then on the back. So picking up directly where the Marvel Knights Omnibus leaves off, you have issues 16 through 19, 26 through 50, and 56 through 60. Volume 2 is 61 through 81, What If Karen Page Had Lived, and the Ultimate Marvel Team-Up issues 6 through 8. Again, it's a Bendis omnibus, so it doesn't include issues that weren't written by Brian Michael Bendis. These are first print older omnis as well, so you have that black kind of leather on the hardcover with the red foil logos this time, which is pretty slick, and nothing on the back. Bendis was new at the time, coming off of Sam and Twitch out of the Spawn universe, being brought on by his friend David Mack. We get a kind of more pulp kind of story here from Daredevil. So as you can see, the story continues. Here's David Mack, painted artwork, who's still doing it to this day. Bendis would introduce us to some new characters here. You have Sammy Silk. He's a kid who would find the keys to the Kingpin's kingdom. You have the FBI agent Harold Driver. And then you have the blind social worker Milla Donovan. Kind of a nice parallel to our Matt Murdock. We see team-ups with former colleagues Foggy Nelson, Luke Cage, and of course Spider-Man, as we continue flipping through this David Mack artwork. And of course, it wouldn't be a Daredevil story without a confrontation between him and the Kingpin. Another cameo by Typhoid Mary, and then Bullseye, which has kind of the Daredevil movie Bullseye on his forehead. Volume 2 will wrap up the Bendis run and introduce us to artist Alex Maleev. You have the story The Widow. This is Daredevil reuniting with Black Widow once again. The only thing is that she has an assassin that's hot on her tail, so of course, she goes back to Matt Murdock for help. Then it leads into the Golden Age storyline, which tells a story of the Kingpin prior to the Kingpin Wilson Fisk, which will eventually lead into Daredevil himself becoming the Kingpin of Hell's Kitchen, for quite a twist in our tale of Matt Murdock. The Murdock Papers is the storyline that will end out this omnibus with Bendis and Maleev. Daredevil is forced to face justice in an epic conclusion to this saga. with an action-packed climax at the end here. And remember, we're doing a giveaway for a sealed copy of Volume 2. This is the newer printing. Make sure to follow me on Encore. And we're going to jump into the next run in the timeline. It's Daredevil by Ed Brubaker. None other than the crime thriller extraordinaire himself, Ed Brubaker. You've got Lark and Guadino with this beautiful Mark Djurjevic wraparound cover on Volume 2. Some thinner omnis, as you can see, but similar to the Bendis runs on those spines, and that's because this picks up directly where that leaves off, where that ended with issue 81. We have 82 through 105, then 106 through 119, and then we would go back to the legacy numbering with issue 500. It also collects Annual 1 from this Volume 2 and Daredevil Blood of the Tarantula, the graphic novel. A very similar aesthetic to the Bendis Omnis. You have the black with the red foil, same on the spines, nothing on the back. So as usual, everything in Matt Murdock's life is falling apart. He's losing his control over Hell's Kitchen, and we find ourselves in a post-Civil War era. So the consequences from that major event, how do they affect Daredevil? How do they affect Hell's Kitchen? And who returns from Daredevil's past in this gritty tale that only Brubaker could tell? You can see Daredevil in jail, kind of a trope that we'll see throughout Daredevil's career many times over. Of course, Wilson Fisk is back as Matt's visiting him in jail. Anytime you get Ed Brubaker, you're going to get amazing storytelling, almost like TV show worthy scripts, like think Law and Order or some type of crime show. More of a grounded, realistic take, even though you have Tombstone on the cover of 91 here. We see those familiar faces, like I mentioned, with Elektra and Bullseye. Daredevil getting caught fighting, being broadcast on the news. At this point in the story, Matt ended up marrying Milla Donovan, and of course her being in his life has made her a target, as we saw with Mr. Fear at the end of that first omnibus. Matt finally gets some support from former friends and new ones, Foggy Nelson, Becky Blake, Dakota North, and Ben Urich, all trying to help him put the pieces of his life back together. Matt has to help free Big Ben Donovan, which is a former foe of Daredevil, but being that he knows he's innocent, you know, Matt's got to do the right thing. The Hand makes a return here as well, and they're looking for new leadership because their former leader, Elektra, had been found out to be a Skrull during the events of Secret Invasion. So the Hand wants Daredevil to be their new leader. We get introduced to a new villain named Lady Bullseye, who is just as deadly as her male counterpart. She actually takes down part of the Kingpin's family. This is going to lead to an unlikely team up between the Kingpin and Daredevil himself in order to take down the Hand, which will come to a climax with one of Daredevil's original and most deadly foes, the Owl. Great end to an amazing run by Ed Brubaker. Well, you know how the saying goes, if you can't beat him, join him. And that's what Daredevil does when he takes over leadership of the Hand in Shadowland, a fan favorite storyline and omnibus. Either Born Again is Daredevil's most popular story or it's Shadowland. So technically an event type of omnibus, but it directly follows Daredevil by Ed Brubaker. You got Daredevil with the classic black costume, and this collects issues 501 to issues 512, the Shadowland 5-issue event. Then you have some one-shots, Shadowland Elektra, Bullseye, Ghost Rider, and Spider-Man. It includes After the Fall, Shadowland, Moon Knight 1 through 3, Shadowland Blood on the Streets 1 through 4, Shadowland Daughters of the Shadow 1 through 3, Shadowland Power Man 1 through 4, Thunderbolts 148 through 149, and Daredevil Reborn, the 4-issue miniseries. This one has a great wraparound cover as well. Daredevil in the new duds. He ends up taking the role as the leader of the Hand during this run, and he wants to bring the Hand into the light, into a better direction, but unfortunately that doesn't happen. So Daredevil, like I said, reluctantly accepts the role as the leader of the Hand, wants to do the right thing, but Bullseye has different plans. When Bullseye starts terrorizing Hell's Kitchen, it's going to make Daredevil and the Hand do some questionable things. Here you have Bullseye cosplaying as Hawkeye, putting on his own duds, and causing all sorts of mayhem. Here's Daredevil running with his boys, the Hand. Here they are praising Lord Daredevil. Former friends have to question what Daredevil is up to, so Spider-Man, Luke Cage, and others try to figure out what's going on with Matt, and he's not in any mood to play games. He knows what needs to be done, even though his colleagues may not see that. Now, with Spider-Man coming into the fray, Mr. Negative is not too far behind him. We have Luke Cage ends up being joined with Iron Fist, but there is a new Power Man in town. Here we have another appearance of Elektra. We get an appearance here by Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, and even Ghost Rider himself makes his presence known in this epic event. When those heroes can't do what needs to be done, the Punisher and Wolverine step in to try their hand at talking some sense or talking down Matt Murdock, as we can see here, or Power Man, Shang-Chi, and Iron Fist. Typhoid Mary now by Daredevil's side along with Elektra. Yeah, Born Again might have been the first Daredevil epic. Shadowland is definitely an epic of modern times. There are so many dark and gritty stories surrounding Matt Murdock, and after years of that Mark Waid figure, it was time to lighten up his life a little bit, and that's exactly what he did in this Eisner Award-winning run. In 2011, Mark Waid takes over the pen and scripts a multiple Eisner Award-winning run on Daredevil, which is completed in these 2 omnibus. A lighter take on Daredevil, which is probably why they went with the brighter white spines. You have Daredevil kind of having fun with a smile on his face. The run would last for 36 issues, the first 27 collected in Volume 1 with issue 10.0. It also has Amazing Spider-Man 677, Avenging Spider-Man 6, and The Punisher issue 10 from the 2011 volume. Now, Volume 2 of the Omni collects issues 28 through 36, but it also has Indestructible Hulk 9 and 10, Daredevil 1 through 18 from the next volume. This is the 2014 volume. It would also include the one-shot 1.50 issues, the 0.1, and the 15.1. Each of these have wraparound covers, so we'll take a look at them one at a time. But here you have Matt Murdock's Radar Vision. This one opens up to some white cover page. So again, the tone and the whole theme of this run, much different than what we've seen before. You know, writers try to jump on and really make the character their own, and I think that's really what Mark Waid was out here to do. So you have this kind of lighter tone, even with the art style. Paulo Riviera really complements Mark Waid's lighter take with how he depicts Hell's Kitchen. Everything is a little bit more brighter, a little bit more cheerful. We get a new way that we can see how Matt's radar vision works, as he can see other people's heartbeats. Some of the villains that show up in this run are none other than Ulysses Claw. You've got the Mole Man, the Bruiser, and another battle with Captain America. We'll see some familiar team-ups with Daredevil and Spider-Man, but this time we get a team-up with Daredevil and the Black Cat, which actually makes for probably a better team-up than Daredevil and the Black Widow, if you ask me. Daredevil gets his hand on the Omega Drive in this run, which makes him extremely dangerous and also makes him a target for all of the villains that want their hands on the Omega Drive as well. Now, throughout this run, Matt's trying to have a brighter outlook on life, but as villains keep appearing and as drama continues, he's finding it harder and harder to kind of keep that state of mind. The wraparound cover on Volume 2 has a similar aesthetic, but it's broken down more into like comic book panels. Definitely the Kingpin, more heartbeats. This one opens up to kind of a dark red cover page, and then the Man Without Fear himself. Volume 2 is when Chris Samney would join in, and he did much more than just add art to Mark Waid's storytelling. They really wrote this in tandem, more of a collaborative effort, which made for some great storytelling. This would lead to yet another Eisner Award, this time for Chris Samney. This one starts off with corruption within the justice system, all while Matt's friend Foggy Nelson is battling cancer. All of this leads to Matt Murdock leaving Hell's Kitchen for the sunny shores of California. Daredevil takes his talents to San Francisco, accepts a multi-million-dollar book deal for his tell-all story. But things are not all fun and games in California as he would hope. He has a longtime villain, the Shroud, until we get Matt Murdock returning to Hell's Kitchen to end off this award-winning run. Matt Murdock is back in Hell's Kitchen, and he's back in court with this fan favorite run, Daredevil by Charles Soule, which sees Daredevil on the other side of the law as a prosecutor for the DA and a vigilante in the streets of New York. And who better to write a lawyer than a lawyer himself? Charles Soule spent 3 years on this run for the volume that started in 2015. He's joined by Ron Garney, Phil Noto, and Suzuka. So this collects the entire run. It's issues 1 through 28. Then it goes back to the legacy renumbering 595 through 612 and includes the first annual. There's a 4-issue miniseries with Daredevil and Punisher called Seventh Circle, and it's got some material from the all-new, all-different .1 issue number 1. Not a wraparound cover, but we do have the art from the dust jacket by Phil Noto on the front. Here we have the spine, and then we have the back. David Lopez giving us this crazy Daredevil portrait with Daredevil and what looks like, some hand ninjas. All right, we open up to some red cover pages here. Here's Daredevil. Looks like he's channeling his father here with his boxing stance. So in this run, Daredevil has kind of a new look here, less of an armor costume or even a spandex costume. And then he's got a new protege by the name of Blind Spot. Matt Murdock is back from California. He's back to being a prosecutor, and he's still Daredevil the Vigilante. So he's going to go up against a Chinatown crime lord called Ten Fingers. There's a new homicidal artist named The Muse. He paints his portraits in the blood of his enemies. Wilson Fisk is running for mayor, which is something that'll continue on into the next series of Omnibus. The story will eventually bring Matt Murdock from the courtroom to the Supreme Court, and then all the way to the mayor of New York City's office. Matt's working for the district attorney, so he's finding himself on the other side of the law. So he's no longer defending victims. He's really trying to prosecute criminals. Aside from his protege Blind Spot, he's also going to be teaming up with fan favorite Spider-Man and Elektra. Of course, we got the Daredevil Punisher team up, like I mentioned, and he'll have to deal with Wilson Fisk becoming the mayor of New York City. We're in an era where the world once knew that Matt Murdock was Daredevil, but for some reason the world can't seem to remember who Daredevil is. Soul's writing pairs up amazing with Ron Garney and Phil Noto. Ron being an Eisner Award winner himself, and Phil Noto with his beautiful lifelike art. Very sought after omnibus and a fan favorite run. And lastly, we have the most recent printed material in omnibus format with the Chip Zdarsky Daredevil run. This also includes the Devil's Reign event, which has its own omnibus, as there were multiple one-shots and miniseries attached to that event. An amazing run by Chip Zdarsky that I was reading in single issues as it was coming out. Let's take a look at the 3 omnibus set now. So here we have the 2 covers. As you can see, Elektra becoming the woman without fear, and then we have the return of Matt Murdock with his kind of character design look. You have some nice red spines here for the dust jackets with volumes 1 and 2. So volume 1 collects the first 30 issues plus the first annual. Then we have issues 31 through 36. Then it switches to the Daredevil Woman Without Fear for a 3-issue miniseries. Volume 2 is where you have the 6-issue Devil's Reign series, but it also includes Devil's Reign Omega #1 and Daredevil 1 through 14, which would be the ongoing series with Elektra as Daredevil. And just like the Mark Waid Omnis, each of these have its own wraparound cover, so we'll look at them one at a time. But here you have Daredevil with Elektra, both as Daredevil. You got the radar sense in the middle here, some black cover pages. And this was a run that I really liked. This is one that I read when it was coming out in single issues. It starts off with Matt Murdock having a relationship with a married woman who's actually the wife of a mob boss, which adds a very realistic dynamic to this comic book character. You have ties to his religion, his morality. We get introduced to this new agent. I want to say Agent Cole. Of course, we have Mayor Wilson Fisk. And it's a very grounded story, kind of until King in Black happens. When King in Black comes, we have Daredevil who accidentally kills somebody and he turns himself in, forcing himself to go to jail. So while Daredevil is in jail, Elektra picks up the costume and starts patrolling as Daredevil until Matt can be exonerated. But when the Venom King in Black storyline terrorizes New York City, he eventually is forced to come out and reprise his role as Daredevil. Here we can see Wilson Fisk. He's the current mayor. The art is amazing here. You can see the handiwork of Kingpin, blood on his hands. But great storytelling. Chip Zdarsky is also one of my favorite modern writers. Now, this will lead into Devil's Reign, and that's going to lead into a transfer of power when Kingpin falls as the mayor and we get a new mayor. Here's Daredevil in jail, like I said. He pled guilty to second-degree manslaughter. Here's kind of that Frank Millerism that I was saying way earlier in the video. Typically, it's Elektra that stabs somebody, and you can see the blade poking through their back, but this time it's showing or re-showing the death of Elektra by the hands of Bullseye. The wraparound for Volume 2, same thing. It's Matt Murdock and Elektra as Daredevil, but different images here. This one also opening up to some black cover pages. I like that redesign of the Daredevil costume as well. And Elektra's costume is cool with that kind of like mask covering her face. So Matt Murdock in jail, he eventually gets out and he helps to take down a serial killer that's been terrorizing Hell's Kitchen. Kraven decides that Elektra is worthy of his hunt. So you have Kraven hunting down the woman without fear. The whole Devil's Reign storyline comes into play with the mayor, Wilson Fisk, hiring the evil Thunderbolts to be his enforcers. So he gave the bad guys a badge and makes the heroes turn against them, essentially making them the villains. So you have the likes of Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Cap, Spider-Man, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage, everybody trying to take down the legal entity that is the Thunderbolts. Here's the conclusion of Devil's Reign here with Matt Murdock, Daredevil, beating the shit out of the mayor. But the mayor's a bad guy, so our heroes are doing what they have to do here. Luke Cage will eventually take the Kingpin's role over as the mayor of New York City and leaves everything all well and good. And this is typical for Marvel to do. If you have an event that takes place during a character storyline, they'll put the event in there, but this event had many tie-ins and crossovers and things that weren't collected in the Zdarsky Omnibus. So you do have the 6-issue Devil's Reign event, but it includes Spider-Woman 18 and 19. It does include the same Daredevil Woman Without Fear 1 through 3, but you get Devil's Reign Superior 4 1 through 3, the Villains for Hire 1 through 3, Winter Soldier one-shot, the X-Men 1 through 3, the Spider-Man one-shot. You have Moon Knight issue 8, and then you have Devil's Reign Moon Knight and Devil's Reign Omega. We kind of get a wraparound cover here, although I don't know why they put the image of the spine here. Kind of deters from that just a little bit, but yeah, this is really if you're a completionist or if you really love the Devil's Reign event, but you didn't really care for the Zdarsky Omnibus. It double dips, but it gives you everything regarding Devil's Reign that we didn't get in those Zdarsky Omnis. So that's it. And a lot of times what you find is with these events, the one-shots and the little mini-series aren't really pertinent to the main story, but it's kind of like, what's going on with the X-Men while all this is going down in Hell's Kitchen? Why are they not helping in the main story? Like, what's going on? What are they doing on their side of town? Here's that wraparound image, by the way, that is on the hardcover itself. So yeah, I mean, do you really need Zdarsky Volume 2 plus Devil's Reign? Not really, but if you're a completionist and you want everything associated with it, then you're going to go for one of these. So here's Kraven the Hunter with Elektra as Daredevil, like we mentioned, looking at the Zdarsky Omnibus. So there we go. This is the most recent Daredevil stuff that's been published in omnibus format. All right, everybody, thank you for checking out the video. I hope I didn't make it too long. Again, we're doing a giveaway for the Daredevil Omnibus by Bendis Volume 2. This is the sealed new printing. All you got to do is download Encore using the link in the description or in the pinned comment. Make sure to enter your payment information, follow me on there, and then enter that giveaway. And check out anything that I may have for sale up there. I probably have a lot of buy it nows. Maybe you can shoot me an offer, some Omni, some statues, some single issues. But thanks for watching, you guys. Stay minty fresh. Peace.